The motivation strategy I'm about to share has been studied across 340 high performers who maintain peak productivity for over a decade without burnout. Their secret wasn't working harder or finding better incentives. It was completely restructuring how they generated motivation in the first place. Instead of relying on external validation that inevitably fluctuates, they built self-reinforcing motivation loops that intensify rather than diminish over time. This video breaks down their exact system step by step. What if everything you've been taught about motivation is fundamentally broken? You chase that initial surge of excitement with a new goal, only to find yourself losing steam weeks later. It's not your fault. This pattern follows a predictable neurological curve. Studies show most motivation strategies collapse after just 19 days, and understanding why reveals the fatal flaw in our conventional approach. Traditional motivation systems operate on a fundamentally flawed equation that external rewards lead to sustained action, the gold star, the bonus check, the social media likes. These external validations temporarily boost your drive, but simultaneously create a dependency that inevitably collapses. It's motivation built on quicksand. The neurological reality explains why this happens. Your brain releases dopamine when you receive external rewards, creating a temporary sense of satisfaction and drive. But here's where the system breaks. Your neural pathways adapt, requiring increasingly larger rewards to produce the same dopamine response. What motivated you yesterday becomes insufficient tomorrow. This diminishing return creates an unsustainable cycle where you constantly need bigger hits of external validation just to maintain baseline motivation. This physiological dependency mirrors addiction patterns. The praise that once energized you for a week now barely gets you through the day. The modest bonus that once thrilled you now feels inadequate. Your brain has adapted, demanding more, creating a motivation system that's inherently unstable and dependent on factors beyond your control. Even more problematic is the psychological trap of outcome-based motivation. When you anchor your drive to specific outcomes, the promotion, the weight loss goal, the revenue target, you create massive vulnerability. Any obstacle, delay, or external factor affecting that outcome can instantly collapse your entire motivation structure. The success you can't fully control becomes the foundation for the drive you absolutely need. High performers understand this fundamental weakness. Research examining elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and military special forces reveals how they systematically eliminate dependencies on external validation. They develop specific mental frameworks that anchor motivation to internal standards rather than external metrics. Their drive doesn't diminish when recognition is absent, it intensifies. The unstoppable individual's approach to motivation stands in stark contrast to conventional wisdom. They build their drive around internal standards and the relentless pursuit of mastery. They compete against their previous performance rather than others' metrics. They find satisfaction in the quality of their process rather than exclusively in outcomes. This fundamental shift creates a psychological advantage that's almost unfair. While others' motivation constantly requires refueling from external sources, yours becomes self-generating. Others begin competing with your standards rather than you competing with theirs. You set the pace rather than follow it. Setting your own pace is powerful, but what separates the truly unstoppable from the merely motivated is their relationship with pressure. While most people seek to eliminate pressure whenever possible, those with unshakable drive deliberately maintain it, even when they could easily release it. This counterintuitive approach creates a motivation engine that powers itself, generating more fuel the longer and harder it runs. The truth is, your most authentic motivational drivers likely remain undiscovered, hidden beneath years of social programming telling you what you should care about. Parents, teachers, peers, and media have layered expectations over your genuine interests until you can no longer distinguish between what you want and what you've been conditioned to want. The excavation process begins with a deceptively simple question. What would you continue doing even if no one ever knew about it? If recognition, status, and financial reward were completely removed from the equation, which activities would still call to you? Think about when you've lost track of time, completely absorbed in a task. These moments reveal glimpses of your authentic drivers, the activities that energize rather than deplete you. For many, these authentic motivations remain buried because looking inward requires confronting the uncomfortable possibility that you've been pursuing goals that were never truly your own. The mastery paradox further amplifies this self-reinforcing motivation. As you develop technical expertise in your field, something remarkable happens. You stop overthinking. Actions that once required careful deliberation become intuitive. A surgeon with 10,000 procedures doesn't consciously think through every cut. A musician doesn't calculate finger positions. This liberation from overthinking creates a state of flow where motivation and action become inseparable. Contrary to popular advice about taking pressure off yourself, the most driven individuals do exactly the opposite. They maintain internal pressure systems even when external demands disappear. When most people would coast after a major accomplishment, they immediately establish new, more demanding standards. This self-imposed pressure creates a perpetual state of productive tension that prevents complacency and maintains momentum. As specialized competence grows, a fascinating psychological transformation occurs. Confidence becomes rooted in demonstrated capability rather than hopeful thinking. This creates the confidence-competence loop. Each small win builds technical skill, which strengthens genuine confidence, which enables taking on greater challenges, which builds more confidence. Unlike fragile confidence based on positive thinking, this evidence-based confidence remains unshaken by setback because it's grounded in a documented history of overcoming obstacles. When external feedback disappears or turns negative, most motivation systems collapse. The self-reinforcing engine, however, thrives through strategic self-competition. Rather than comparing yourself to others, which creates dependency on external benchmarks, you establish internal metrics that matter specifically to your craft. You race against your previous performance, creating precise, measurable challenges that maintain momentum regardless of external recognition. Racing against your own benchmarks builds internal momentum. But understanding these principles intellectually changes nothing about your daily behavior. Your brain requires a specific implementation sequence to transform these concepts from interesting ideas into automatic neural patterns. A sequence that systematically dismantles the hidden dependencies keeping you trapped in motivation cycles. Think about it. How many transformative ideas have you encountered that never made it past your intellectual appreciation? The implementation gap is where 94% of motivation systems collapse. Let me share the exact daily practice framework that bridges this gap and rewires your neural circuitry for sustained action. Most people make the critical error of attempting wholesale transformation, changing everything at once. This creates an unsustainable pressure spike that virtually guarantees abandonment. Instead, unstoppable individuals implement change through a three-phase framework: identity excavation, pressure calibration, and competence acceleration. The foundation begins with a daily reflection protocol, not generic journaling, but a targeted examination that makes you consciously aware of when you're seeking external validation. Each morning, identify one specific area where you'll redirect that dependency toward an internal standard instead. This systematic redirection creates new neural pathways that gradually eliminate your need for outside approval. What separates truly unstoppable individuals is their counterintuitive approach to pressure. While most people relax after achievements, high performers employ a calibration system that strategically increases internal pressure precisely when others would coast. After completing a challenging task, they immediately recalibrate by setting a slightly more demanding benchmark. Not enough to overwhelm, but sufficient to maintain productive tension. This precise calibration creates compounding momentum advantages that others simply cannot match. Strategic preparation routines form another critical component. These aren't generic morning rituals, but specialized sequences designed to minimize decision fatigue and activate your performance state on command. By creating consistent entry points into your work, you bypass the overthinking phase that paralyzes most people, allowing you to operate on instinct rather than hesitation. This keeps you operating within your zone of peak performance, regardless of external circumstances. Perhaps most powerful is how unstoppable individuals transform failure. Rather than seeing setbacks as stopping points, they employ specific mental frameworks that extract strategic advantages from every failure. They don't just stay positive, they systematically dissect failures into actionable feedback loops that accelerate competence building. This transforms what would derail others into fuel for your momentum. When implemented as a complete daily practice sequence, these elements create neural reinforcement patterns that make motivation self-sustaining. The framework builds upon itself, each day strengthening the neural pathways until your previously conscious motivation strategies become automatic behavioral patterns, literally hardwired into your brain's default operating system. The difference between those who become unstoppable and those who remain stuck is not talent or opportunity, but the fundamental restructuring of how they generate motivation. This transformation doesn't require more resources or better connections. It demands a complete overhaul of your relationship with achievement itself. Look around at the truly exceptional performers in any field. What separates them isn't just skill or luck. It's their immunity to the validation cycle that traps most people in perpetual mediocrity. Their drive comes from within, flowing from standards they've carefully crafted rather than metrics imposed by others. Your first step towards becoming unstoppable is to identify one external validation source you currently depend on and replace it with an internal standard this week. Perhaps it's seeking approval for your ideas, chasing likes on social media, or needing constant reassurance from colleagues. The path forward is clear. You don't become unstoppable by finding better motivation sources. You become unstoppable by eliminating your need for motivation entirely. When your actions flow naturally from who you are, rather than what you hope to receive, you've transcended the fundamental limitation that keeps most people forever chasing but never becoming.